Picture the scene, if you will. As the party ventures deep into the ancient ruin, the air grows thick with the stench of mildew and stagnant water. The rogue of the party scans for traps, but the stonework is old and treachery lies hidden in subtle detail. A faint click echoes beneath their boots, and before a warning can be shouted, the ceiling groans. Motes of dust drift downward, followed by a sudden wet splash as a massive slimy ooze detaches from a concealed recess above and crashes to the ground directly in front of the group. The impact sends a rippling shudder through its translucent body, within which bones, rusted swords, and scraps of armor churn. Suspended in slowly dissolving torment, the cube quivers once, sensing movement, then lurches forward with a grotesque grace. Panic rises as the narrow corridor allows little room for retreat, and the cube's acidic form threatens to engulf anything it touches. The faint sizzle of melting stone fills the air as it inches closer, restless and silent, a trap not just of mechanics, but of hunger. Yes, if you haven't worked it out yet, today we are going to be talking about one of the most iconic monsters in all of Dungeons and Dragons, the Gelatinous Cube. Hello and welcome to Dungeon Deep Dive, where we talk about all things D&D monsters, from monsters and their lore to their publication history, where they originated, and how you can use them in your D&D games. Now, there are few monsters in D&D that are as iconic, bizarre, and well, transparent as the Gelatinous Cube. It's a classic dungeon hazard that proves that you don't need claws or teeth to be deadly. Just big, silent, and made of good old jello. The Gelatinous Cube, also known as the code. How do you say that? The Gelatinous Cube, also known sometimes as the Athcoid, is a translucent ooze composed of gelatinous-like matter made into a shape of a cube. The living jello shot is a fan favorite of individuals on the evil side of the alignment spectrum, as a little guard dog to protect their treasures and valuables and clean up their dungeons. Your standard run-of-the-mill Gelatinous Cube stands, do they actually stand? They don't have feet. Do they sit? Anyway, they stand or sit at around 10 to 15 feet tall and weigh anywhere in the range of 50,000 pounds. I feel like a good way to tell the, in quotes, age of the jello is by the amount of random items and armor that will be floating around on the inside from its previous meals. These can also serve as a warning to other adventurers that encounter the cube to show just how many lives the cube's taken. I feel like for the rest of the video, I'm just going to be going to refer to the Gelatinous Cube as the Cube, just for my own sanity and yours. The body of the cube is almost completely transparent and extremely malleable to its surroundings, making it easy to squeeze into any space it needs to find the next victim. The cube is a mindless predator that will silently roam any holes of any dungeon that it has been placed in, absorbing anything it can to get its slimy little pseudopods on. Anything that is organic that the cube consumes is quickly dissolved in acidic ooze, but anything like bones, strangely enough, and inorganic materials like metals and woods would just float around in the ooze until it decides to expel them. Now, I know what you're thinking, man. I'm looking at the cube, but I don't see any eyes, I don't see any ears, and I don't see a nose on this thing. So how does it know where the party is? Well, my little dice goblins, the cube senses vibrations from movement, but don't think staying in place will help, because they also, like any other ooze, are drawn to warmth. When the cube encounters a party of adventurers, it will charge at them full force, slamming into anything and anyone in its way. It will then hit them with the pseudopods, engulfing them, getting ready to consume. Now, if you're unlucky enough to be engulfed by good old Jerry the Jello, it's not completely the end. It is possible to break free before it fully digests you, but it's not a simple feat. Cubes are classed as hunting monsters. They don't go out stalking the fields of the countryside or the mountains of a snowscape. They are scavengers, picking up the scraps and getting an easy meal when they can. Now, when it comes to knocking boots of old Cubey, the Gelatinous Cube reproduce asexually. There's two ways this can happen. It can either divide into two smaller cubes of equal size, or through a process called budding. What happens with budding is a small rubbery offshoot cube will separate from the main cube into a corner or some leftover refuse or corpses. After that, it will then just be left to fend for itself. There's no love towards the smaller cube from the larger one. It's a high chance that on the prime cube's next passing, that it will just consume the baby cube. If the chance does happen that two fully grown cubes are to meet, then for a short time, they will combine and become one super cube and become one complete entity. Gelatinous cubes are the very few types of creatures that you can actually find out in the wild. Instead, they are prominently found in dark underground structures and dungeons. There are some individuals in the D&D world that keep cubes essentially as janitors for their dungeons, using them to clean out any messes or mishaps that have befallen in their dungeon. There is a theory in the Demonomicon, I can never say that word properly, of Igwulf, I can never pronounce that right either, that gelatinous cubes as well as other oozes are fragments or spawns of the demon lord Jubilex that is said to have the ability to exert control over them and give them a sense of purpose and slightly more intelligence. Mr. Gygax did actually speculate that they were created by a result of careless alchemists disposing of reagents into the sewer system, where they would inadvertently create life forms. Now, when it comes to the publication of Old QB here, they made their first appearance in the original D&D 1974 Dungeons & Dragons 3-volume set, Monsters and Treasure. There isn't a lot in the book except for a small paragraph describing the cube, saying gelatinous cubes are underground creatures of near complete transparency, which fit exactly the typical corridor of a dungeon. Metal objects absorbed into them would be visible thereafter within their body. These monsters would be difficult to harm and have a large number of hit dice. A little fun fact for your noggins, the cubes was created by the beautiful mind of Gary Gygax, and the inspiration for this, rather than it being inspired from outside sources like movies and comic books, it was actually created because it perfectly fits a 10 by 10 hallway in dungeons to create a roadblock for dungeon runs. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was some influence from like the movie The Blob and stuff like that, but that is like one of the main reasons there. The cube then later appeared in the 1975 Supplement 1 Greyhawk, with a tiny bit more information on the monster, saying, as the name implies, these monsters are shaped very much like cubes, typically being a 10 by 10 per side, and as to be able to sweep clean of all living materials as well as dead cells, the floor, walls of the labyrinth and dungeon passes. It says that the cube is subject to normal weapons and fire, but lightning, cold, paralyzation, fear, and polymorph attacks do not harm them. It says that if you manage to slay a cube, it states that there will be a rich treasure within their semi-transparent form, as they cannot consume non-organic materials. Mr. Gel Cube then appeared in a bunch of base set books in the 1977 base set home books. We're actually looking at the little stat block we have here. They have a movement speed of 60 feet a turn. Now that is a fast block of jelly. Heading on over to first edition, the cube made its appearance in the AD&D 1977 Monster Manual. In this book, it is classed as a non-common scavenger in the dungeons, ideal for cleaning all living organisms in the area. There's not really any new info on the cubes in this book, but it does say that the cube can be hit with cold damage, and on a failed save, it will reduce the cube's movement by 50%. 30 feet is still pretty fast for a big cube of jelly. I'm just going to say it. The cube is then featured in a little article in the 1987 Dragon Magazine number 124, where this article is written as an in-character lore piece, where the adventurer Haptooth gives an account of his research on the gelatinous cube. On an overview of the article, the narrative unfolds during the Feast of the Moon, a yearly gathering of mages in Waterdeep. Haptooth, a seasoned adventurer of Undermountain, is challenged by his rival Phantus to contribute something more meaningful than tavern tales. In response, Haptooth presents his study of the gelatinous cube, aiming to enlighten the council. He states that the cube has no true intelligence and acts purely on instinct. He then talks about their feeding and hunting habits, saying that they use a gummy secretion that gets absorbed into the skin, which then paralyzes the target, where it can engulf the target and then digest it with corrosive fluids. He apparently managed to create an antidote for the paralyzation, but he kept it in a small little metal flask. Moving on to second edition, the cube appears in the 1989 Monstrous Compendium Volume 1. But nothing additional is added to the description of the cube, but it does say that they are encouraged to stay in certain areas of dungeons, usually highly popular areas of the dungeons, for their cleaning abilities. The same stat block and information as the 1989 Monstrous Compendium then appears in the second edition 1993 Monstrous Manual. Now, something that I didn't know existed but wish I did. For all of my trading card lovers out there, there was a advanced D&D trading card game, and our monster of today's video had a card in there too. I wonder if you can still get these. Wizards, bring them back please. Next up in our information hunt on the Gelato Cubo, I'm just trying to come up with all sorts of names now for this guy. We move on to third edition, where they show up under oozes in the third edition monster manual, quoting, "This creature looks like a thick wall of quivering, transparent photoplasm. It says that like a ram, it will charge and slam into anything it wants to devour. With the size, they can get up to around 15 feet and around 50,000 pounds, like we said previously, which is around 3,571 stones for us UK folks. They can easily mow down anyone or anything in its way in dark hallways that it calls home. Even if the area the cube lives in is perfectly clear, it would still take a DC 15 spot check to even notice it. Now just imagine, right? You're in a dungeon and down one hallway you see someone just standing like it looks like they're suspended in space. But when you get closer to investigate, you too become trapped in the old Jello prison. That's a really sad way to go, really. The stats and info then get re-released and revisioned in the 3.5 Monster Manual. Now moving on to everybody's favorite edition out of all in D&D, 4th edition. We get Senior QB appearing in the 4th edition Monster Manual. In the manual, it is classed as a level 5 elite brute, and something I never really noticed is in 4th edition, they are classed as large natural beasts. I'm sorry, but there is nothing natural about a big cube of jelly that dissolves you on contact. I am honestly surprised that while going through these books that there hasn't been any variants on the gelatinous cubus. Like, we get the elder black puddings and stuff like that in the previous edition, so why don't we get like elder cubes? Don't worry, I'll change that later in the video. We get some more of the cube in the 4th edition Monster Vault book, where we do get some information on oozes as a whole. It says that oozes can actually get full from eating. It says that when they do, it falls into a torpor and remains motionless on the ground, which is dangerous for a gelatinous cube that is practically invisible. It says when the cube is digesting food, they anesthetize their meal first, a process that numbs victims and muddles their senses, making it harder for the victim to struggle and escape. It also gives some theories on how oozes originated in the world. It does say that some oozes are found in nature, but there is no concrete evidence on how they came to be. Actually, looking through 4th edition, we actually do get an additional cube in the 2009 Dungeon Delve book, where unfortunately nothing really changes stat-wise, but just a little stronger and a little more HP. Now heading off into the realm of 5th edition, we only get the cube in one book, and that is obviously the 5th edition Monster Manual. We get a whole page of info on oozes as a whole, as well as information again on ideas on how the ooze was created. Quoting from the book, it says, according to the Demonomicon of Iglewith, I am never going to say that name right, no matter what, and other sources, oozes are scattered fragments or offspring of the demon lord Jubilex. Whether this is true or not, the Faceless Lord is one of few beings that can control oozes and imbue them with a modicum of intelligence. Most of the time, oozes have no sense of tactics or self-preservation. They are direct and predictable, attacking and eating without cunning. Under the control of Jubilex, however, they exhibit glimmers of sentience and malevolent intent. Okay, so we've gone over the cube through the editions. Now let's go over the 5e stat block, as well as a couple of variants I've made for you guys to use in your D&D games. The Gelatinous Cube is a large ooze with an armor class of 6, so it's not that hard to hit, with 84 hit points and only a 15 feet movement speed. It has condition immunities to blind, charmed, deafened, exhaustion, frightened, prone, because, well, it's an ooze. But it has a blind sight of 60 feet, which is a far distance, but only a challenge rating of 2, which is the same as an Ankeg or a Black Dragon Wormling. It has an ability called Ooze Cube, where the cube takes up its entire space. Other creatures can enter the space, but a creature that does so is subjected to the cube's engulf and has disadvantage on the saving throw. Creatures inside the cube can be seen, but have total cover. A creature within 5 feet of the cube can take an action to pull a creature or an object out of the cube. Doing so requires a successful DC 12 strength check, and the creature making the attempt takes 3d6 acid damage. The cube can hold only one large creature and up to 4 medium or small creatures inside it at one time. It also has an ability called Transparent, where even when the cube is in plain sight, it takes a successful DC 15 perception check to spot the cube that has neither moved nor attacked. A creature that tries to enter the cube's space while unaware of the cube is surprised by the cube. For its actions, it doesn't get any multi-attacks, but it gets a pseudopod attack with a +4 to hit and a 5-foot reach, and this also deals 3d6 acid damage. You also get the engulf attack where, quoting, the cube moves up to its speed. While doing so, it can enter large or smaller creature spaces. Whenever the cube enters a creature's space, the creature must make a DC 12 dexterity saving throw. On a successful save, the creature can choose to be pushed 5 feet back or to the side of the cube. A creature that chooses not to be pushed suffers the consequences of a failed saving throw. On the failed save, the cube enters the creature's space. The creature takes 3d6 acid damage and is engulfed. The engulfed creature can't breathe, is restrained, and takes an additional 6d6 acid damage at the start of each of the cube's turn. When the cube moves, the engulfed creature is also moved with it. Now, if you do end up being engulfed, you can try to escape by taking an action to make a DC 12 strength check, and on a successful, the creature escapes and enters the space of its choice within 5 feet of the cube. That's basically it for the Wizards version of the cube, but let's go over a couple of variants I've created to spice up your games. The first one is a version that I've called the Gelatinous Storm Cube. The idea I got for this was a gelatinous cube that picks up a gem infused with lightning magic. It's a large ooze with an AC of 13 and 110 hit points, and I've given it a resistance to lightning damage and the damage immunity to acid damage. But I did just give it all the same condition immunities as well as sensors as the original cube. For the abilities, obviously I've given it the transparent ability as well as an ability called lightning absorption, where whenever the cube is subjected to lightning damage, it takes no damage and instead regains a number of hit points equal to the lightning damage dealt. I've also given it a rechargeable ability called Storm Pulse, where as a bonus action the cube emits a crackling burst of storm energy. Creatures within 10 feet must make a DC 13 Constitution saving throw or take 4d8 lightning damage. For the actions, it has the pseudopod action where I've given it a +5 to hit with a 5-foot reach and deals 3d6 bludgeoning as well as 1d8 lightning. And obviously it has the engulf action, but I've changed the DC to a 13 dex save that they have to succeed or be engulfed. I've made it so engulfed creatures still take the 3d6 acid damage, but they also take an additional 1d4 lightning damage at the start of each of the cube's turns, and a creature can escape with a DC 13 strength check. Now onto the final variant, I thought I would go for the Super Cube, where two cubes combine together and to merge into one entity, and I've called it the Ooze Mother. Obviously if you want to use these, you can rename them to whatever you want. These are just names, like placeholder names I've given them. It has an AC of 8, so it's still pretty easy to hit, but it has 210 hit points. It has all the same immunities and sensors, and it has the transparent ability as well as an ability called Ooze Overload that it can use once a day, where when reduced to 0 hit points, the cube splits into two individual gelatinous cubes with 30 hit points each, which immediately act on the next initiative count. I gave it this ability because it reminded me of like a stage 2 boss in Elden Ring. I've given it an ability called Absorb Mass, where the cube can move through the space of a larger or smaller creature. It may engulf up to 2 creatures per round, and it can have up to 4 creatures engulfed at one time. Because it's a combination of 2 cubes, I've given it a multi-attack action where it can hit with 2 pseudopods on one round. The pseudopods have a +9 to hit and a reach of 10 feet, and deal 3d8 bludgeoning and 2d8 acid. I've also given it a bigger engulf action called Super Engulf. I know, original. Where the cube moves up to its speed. When doing so, it can enter a huge or smaller creature space, and each creature must make a DC 16 dex save. On the fail, the cube engulfs the creature takes 4d10 acid damage, and is restrained, blinded, and unable to breathe. On the success, obviously they can escape and go within 5 feet of the cube, but when engulfed on a failed save, they take an additional 4d10 acid damage at the start of each of the cube's turn. These monsters are a classic D&D encounter that every party eventually has to encounter in their game. You could go the classic route with the cube being a trap trigger for a dungeon that the party is exploring. They could trigger a plate on the floor and then the cube could just fall out of the sky in front of them, launching a surprise attack. Or maybe you throw the trope of it being in a dungeon out the window and somehow the cube manages to escape out of the dungeon and begins causing havoc in the outside world, growing in size, eating everything it grabs. This could also be a good transition to how a blob of annihilation could be created. A blob of annihilation could be just a gelatinous cube that got out of control. That's a good story hook. But that is all I have for you guys today on the gelatinous cube. Thank you all for watching. I hope you found the video helpful, and if there's anything I've missed, I would love to hear about it in the comments. What monster would you like me to cover next? Let me know in the comments below and I will add your comment to the end of the next video. If you enjoyed the video, drop it a like and a cheeky sub if you haven't already. It does help out a lot more than you realize. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.